Sports media has changed forever. Video from Brett Kollmann. I have not reviewed one of his, or reacted to one of his videos. The link will be in the description below. Let's go ahead and watch/react.
Day in the history of ESPN.
Disney once again laying people off, this time folks on TV on ESPN. The anchors getting the axe.
20+ people laid off.
Everybody's on the chopping block.
They're looking to save money everywhere they can, and so yeah, a lot of big names.
Blindsiding a 17-year employee.
I will remind everybody they're casualties of a layoff because ESPN lost by $5.5 billion.
More recognizable faces are now going to be in independent spaces.
Okay, so I have no idea what this video is about. Vague title, so I was letting it play a little bit there. So I'll go ahead and I like to offer some of my opinion first before we get into a lot of the video. I think sports media has changed, but I think it changed a long time ago. I have said on here before, and I've said for a long time, that around 2012, 2013-ish, somewhere in there, whenever Barstool Sports, Bro Bible, The Chive, Bill Simmons was kind of starting Grantland and all of that at the time, that's when you really noticed the shift. That's when sports media went away from kind of the same way that news stations did, right? Like news isn't what it used to be. People don't go to their local news station to get the news. They go to Twitter, they go to Google, they go to Facebook, they go wherever, right? When I was a kid, to get sports, to get scores, to get stats, to get any of that stuff, I would have to go to ESPN. There was just no other way around it. I would go to ESPN, I'd watch the bottom line, I'd wait to see the scores trickle, I'd wait to see the stats, I'd wait for Sportscenter to watch. I watch Sportscenter every day, at least once, most of the time, multiple times, to see the highlights, to see who did what, all that, to get the analysis. Now, there's just so many other avenues. There's so many other avenues to get it. I haven't watched a full episode of SportsCenter unless it's just on in the background in a long time, because I got the scores, I got the stats, I've got the analysis, I've got the highlights, I've got all that way before SportsCenter happens. I've got it during the game. I'm live tracking the game, right? So when you have these super highly paid anchors who can be anybody, I can't name any SportsCenter anchors right now that wasn't a SportsCenter anchor 15 years ago. It's just a revolving door of random people, and they can be whoever. Right now, the name of the game is to make a brand, to make a channel. If you can independently make it, that is the move. That's been the move for the last 10 years. And that goes for sports, that goes for wrestling, that goes for video games, that goes for whatever. You're better off, like for example, IGN.com was a huge entertainment technology video game website 10 years ago. You are way better off starting your own YouTube channel, doing your own reviews, doing your own live streams, your playthroughs, your whatever. You're way better off doing that than trying to get a job at IGN. At ESPN, the way to do it now, start your own channel, do your own analysis, basically do what I'm doing right here. And if ESPN wants to call, ESPN will call. Pat MacAfee is the example. Where do you think Pat MacAfee would be better? On the Pat MacAfee Show? Or do you think if he was the anchor for SportsCenter? 20 years ago, the pinnacle would be the anchor for SportsCenter. It's not like that anymore. Comedians, what do most comedians do? Do they do a comedy album and a stand-up special once a year? Or do they do their own YouTube channel, their own Instagram reels, their podcast, their video podcast, along with specials, along with whatever else? The landscape of media as a whole has changed.
McAfee, etc., can go direct to consumer.
The way the industry is moving, I don't know if quality is what's going to keep people around anyway.
This show is more entertaining than anything on ESPN.
This is where we are at as an industry. It's saddening, and the turn we are taking is for the worst.
I don't know about that. That's a conversation, right? Like, is this better or is this worse? I would say it's better. There's way more garbage, but there's way more like at the top too. The stuff you can find, like the good channels, the good podcasts, the good blogs, the good Twitter accounts, they are really, really, really good. There are some YouTube channels on here, including mine, that are better than anything you're going to see on Fox Sports or ESPN. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but the content that we're putting out on this channel is so far and ahead of stuff like First Things First on Fox Sports. 100%. It just is. You know, there are YouTube channels that I watch every day that the content is so much better than Skip Bayless's show.
We are now firmly in an era where individual personal brands in sports media are king, and they supersede pretty much everything else, including the corporate brands of the networks that employ those people. If you look at everything that's happened at ESPN over the last month or so, with signing Pat MacAfee to a mega deal.
This is my prediction for places like Barstool and ESPN or whatever. What will cannibalize them is that they will be a launching pad for stars. But once the star is a star, they'll go independent. That's what's happening to Barstool right now. If you take away the main guys, the Prez, Big Cat, those guys, if you're new in Barstool, if you get hired by Barstool and you get a big brand, like let's say the Call Her Daddy brand, and then you can say you are big enough to where you can do your own podcast, your own YouTube channel, your own live stream, your own deals, your own whatever, and there's no middleman, there's no cut, you're going to do that every time. And that's happening to ESPN. And that's happening to Fox Sports. Shannon Sharp is big enough to where he can do his own YouTube, his own podcast, his own whatever, do ad deals, all that. And he can do guest appearances or guest shows or sign a year contract here, a year contract there. Once you reach a certain peak, it's a domino effect. Once you reach a certain peak, you can do anything. It's wild. Like Brendan Schaub is a good example. Brendan Schaub is an ex-UFC fighter, has his own podcast network, all that stuff. He built a following, a lot of help with Joe Rogan's podcast and all that. He built a following. He's got multiple podcasts, so he's got multiple podcast streams coming in. I'm sure ad deals for all of them. Then he starts a merchandise store, obviously. Then he starts a whiskey company. And if you have a certain group of people buying all of that stuff, then you can do anything. He could write a book. He could do a stand-up special. He could, the opportunities are endless. So that is the new thing. You build a brand up, and then you just launch everything. And then you are your corporation. You are ESPN. You are whatever the old conglomerates were.
Which he left an even bigger deal with FanDuel to take that deal with ESPN. And you kind of overlay that with the unfortunate layoffs that happened at the same time. And it can kind of feel weird, seeing the dichotomy of a whole bunch of talent get let go while at the same time they sign one talent for a lot of money. And I understand where those mixed feelings come from and why there's a lot of confusion about the state of sports media. And as somebody who used to work in sports TV for a long time, I was in the trenches as a PA at NFL Network, cutting highlights, being in the control room for NFL Red Zone, doing graphics on Red Zone for years, working on virtually every single show that existed at that network at some point in time. And also at the same time doing local sports media at Time Warner Sportsnet, which was later Spectrum Sportsnet, doing like Lakers coverage, Dodgers coverage, Galaxy, CONCACAF, all that kind of stuff. Even going back to my time in high school, I started doing field cam work when I was 16. I started doing technical directing and directing when I was 17. So I spent a lot of my life in sports TV.
So I've talked about this on podcast. I'm not sure if I talked about it recently, but when I was in college in 2009, 2010, I was in it for sports journalism, and I was trying to do sports radio. At the time, terrestrial radio was king. What was king was you try and get on 103.7 The Bear in whatever city you're in. Every city has sports radio stations. And the path was you start in a small market, you go to a medium market, and then hopefully you go to a big market. That was it. That was the only thing. That was the track. And when I got out of college, I got a job in a newspaper. Okay, so I was a newspaper reporter. Again, the whole thing is you start small and you keep going up. You know, you start in a small territory or a region and you hopefully go to a bigger one and get more exposure and whatever. When I was at the newspaper is when YouTube really blew up and when the power of blogs and all that stuff started. So that's when we saw Barstool explode. That's when I saw Bro Bible explode, the Chive explode, all these different websites. Like I said, Grantland, and YouTube started to become way more organized. YouTube used to just be clips. YouTube used to be, you know, random funny clips. No one had like episodic stuff, but they started to do that. And I realized this is it. This is the move. And I quit the newspaper industry because I thought I could do that on the side, get a more stable job in PR and communications, like get out of the newspaper because I thought it was failing, and try and do the YouTube thing on the side and see what happens. I was 100% correct that the old school style of terrestrial radio, newspapers, local news, that's gone. We're over 10 years away from that. It is completely gone. 100% doesn't. I mean, it exists, but it really doesn't. You know, it certainly won't exist in 10 years from now. Newspapers, as they were, won't be a thing. They're barely holding on now. It's all this independent content creator, the brand, the individual brand. Do people want to hear you? Do people like talking or hearing what you have to say? Do people want to have you on when they're eating dinner or sitting around or whatever? Is your voice or whatever you make, is it what they want to be a part of? Whether that's a Twitter handle or an Instagram or a TikTok or YouTube or whatever you make. Do people want to be a part of it?
And then I left all of that to do YouTube for also almost a decade at this point. So I've been on both sides of the fence here. I have watched this transition happen, you know, literally even to myself. So I feel like I'm in a unique position to kind of comment on the state of sports media and maybe give a little bit of context of what's actually happening at ESPN, or at least what I think is happening at ESPN.
Okay.
First things first, I do want to express as much empathy as I possibly can for everybody that did unfortunately recently get let go at ESPN. It was, I think it was 20 total on-air talent got let go.
Yeah, I mean, you never want people to lose their jobs, right?
Were in very expensive contracts. They were making great money, and I kind of don't think that matters. And my buddy Brandon Perna made a great point when he did his video about this topic, that for a lot of the folks that were on-air talent at ESPN that were not former professional athletes themselves, being on air at ESPN is literally their dream job. Like, that is the pinnacle of the profession. That is what you work for, is to be an on-air talent at ESPN. And they had that. And unfortunately, they got let go. And so these are people that literally, in many cases, lost their dream job. And regardless of the dollar amount of their contract, I think that it just sucks, right? Like, no
doubt about it. It does suck, for sure. You never want people to lose their job. There is, though, now more opportunity to pivot for some of those people, like Todd McShay. Todd McShay, if he started his own YouTube channel or his own whatever website where you could pay to get his mock drafts and get his analysis and get his whatever, people would do that. Financially, he would probably be fine doing that immediately. Todd McShay also has connections to Barstool. It would not surprise me at all if Todd McShay signed a contract with Barstool to do content there. And Barstool probably gets, I would guess, more, or if not the same, eyeballs as ESPN. So for someone like Todd McShay, if they want to and if they can, like if they can put forth the effort or whatever of doing all of it, that could be a pretty soft landing. I understand ESPN is the dream job or whatever, but it's not like you're going from that to total obscurity. You're not going to be shut out. Whereas 20 years ago, if you got fired from SNL, where the hell were you going? You know, that was the pinnacle. You had no other option. You were probably just doing some stand-up comedy at a bowling alley, right? But now there is a different way to do it. Like someone like Susie Colbert, Jeff Van Gundy, they probably would have to reach out to different networks because their job's a little bit different. Like Van Gundy, I could see him same deal. I could see him being an analyst or a content creator or whatever on the NBA side of things for different websites. Like, could you see Van Gundy having a podcast on like the Ringer Network? I could, for sure. But it just takes a little bit of the ability to like see the landscape and to pivot around it.
Nobody wants to go through that, and so I empathize with that because it's a very hard thing to have everything you wanted and then have it slip through your fingers. So I want to express empathy first and foremost for those people.
What if I'm worried
the
about
ads, ladies and gentlemen? The ads kill me every time. I'm locked into the show, and then boom, ad.
To explain the network perspective on why those layoffs were probably necessary from Disney's perspective. I do not believe that Disney would have made those cuts unless they absolutely had to, because typically, at least in this business, if a contract is not generating the revenue that they need in order to pay for that contract, they're just going to let it expire, right? But these were outright layoffs. They were ending these contracts early. And I don't think they would have done that if Disney Plus was not losing literally $1.5 billion a year. Like, Disney Plus has been a disaster for them financially for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, Disney's struggling. Disney Plus is struggling. There's a lot of rumor that Disney may be trying to get rid of ESPN, that ESPN may get absorbed by like a DraftKings or a betting network or something like that, and they may absorb ESPN. But it's more about ESPN. It's more about these news networks. Like, you can go and look at any news network, and that's what ESPN is. Look at any news network. They're struggling. CNN, struggling. Fox News, struggling. MSNBC, struggling. ESPN, struggling. Why? Exactly what I said. People do not ingest news like that anymore. People do not ingest SportsCenter the way they did 20 years ago. People don't watch Fox News the way they did 10 years ago. People don't watch CNN the way they did. It's just totally different. People absorb content, news, however you want to phrase it, in a way different way. So when that's the case, of course those things are going to struggle. And ESPN is no different.
And there's a whole bunch of videos on YouTube that kind of dive into why Disney Plus has failed, but that has had an impact on the entire company as a whole. And so in order to make ESPN profitable, there's really only two paths they can take. The first path is obviously, hiring talent that they think is going to bring in enough eyeballs to generate ad dollars so they can be profitable. And the second path is cutting expenses, which means cutting talent that they do not believe is bringing in enough eyeballs to generate enough ad dollars to pay for those salaries. And I do want to make a point here that these are two separate paths and two separate decisions. They're not necessarily linked together. There's not some salary cap that Disney has to adhere to where, we have to cut all these contracts so that we can bring in Pat MacAfee. It's really more like we're bringing in Pat MacAfee because we need somebody that can generate eyeballs and get money injected into this company again through advertising. And at the same time, unfortunately, we need to get rid of contracts that we do not believe are bringing in revenue.
It's also one of those things where it's like you can replace those contracts with lesser contracts of new employees that will do the same thing. Pat MacAfee, if you take, this is going to be a terrible example, but like a local radio station here, WWL, their YouTube channel and my YouTube channel are pretty similar as far as the views and as far as all of that. It's right around, they may be a little higher up sometimes, I might be a little higher up sometimes, but the difference is mine has a $0 investment. Mine has 0 employees. Mine has 0 rent of a building. Mine has 0 staff. Mine has 0 technicians. Mine has 0 publishers, producers, editors, hosts, all that stuff. So for the same results, think about the contract situation or the money situation of one. And obviously, WWL has radio shows and they broadcast, and it's a totally different, they went strictly YouTube. Like, if you look at it like that, if they said, I'm just going to make something, this is going to be completely made up numbers. Let's say they spend a combined $500,000 on their YouTube channel, like what it takes to produce it, the host, all that stuff, the equipment. And let's say they just told me, we'll pay you $50,000 a year if you make YouTube videos for our YouTube channel. I would be making way more. They would be spending way less, and the result for them would be pretty much the same. So to find someone like Pat MacAfee, who can probably bring in the eyeballs of 10 of their current people for a combined probably the same amount of money, of course they're going to do that deal. And that's probably how they'll do it moving forward. Instead of having a million different employees or a million different hosts and analysts and a rotating room of hundreds and hundreds of people, they'll probably have like 10 to 15 mega stars that they kind of rotate their shows through. And that's going to be the new how they do it. Instead of having 19 different SportsCenter anchors throughout the day, they'll just have Pat McAfee show and then another show, another show, another show, SportsCenter with Scott Van Pelt. Boom. Call it a day.
Hence the layoffs. All these people that got laid off, I don't think that they would have got laid off if Disney felt that they were a plus on the balance sheet. As callous as that
obviously.
sounds.
Yeah, for sure.
They need to make money. They need to be profitable because Disney Plus is just an anchor on the entire Disney business, globally. Disney Plus is dragging everything down. So ESPN has to make money, and I think that those are the two paths that they're taking simultaneously. Now, for everyone else that is still at ESPN or FS1 or NBC or print media or any other outlet, right? Anybody that's in sports media, and I know a lot of them are probably going to watch this because I know many of them all across these different outlets, so I'm sure a lot of them are going to see this video at some point. If you're watching this and you're in the industry, I want you to be aware of where sports media is right now from a consumer perspective. Let's talk.
If they don't know, that's a huge problem. If they're in the space, if you're at ESPN and you are an analyst or you are a content personality and you don't know where it's at, that's probably not a good sign. You should be able to see what's going on, I think.
Talk about what actually works in modern sports media and why a lot of legacy outlets are now having to play catch up with new media like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and all the hundreds of creators that are slowly but surely ripping eyeballs away from those networks. With the rise of all these different social media platforms, sports fans now have more options than ever for where they consume their sports content. Yes, they could turn on a debate show in the morning while they're getting ready for work, which, let's be honest, that format now is basically just background noise while people make their coffee and toast a bagel. But if they don't like the debate format, they don't have to watch that anymore. They're not locked in to network television. They can get a million different things from a million different sources.
And they can specialize. That's another big thing too. Like think about SportsCenter or a debate show. Are they going to talk about your favorite team? Probably not, unless your favorite team's the Lakers or the Yankees. But if your favorite team's the Ravens, how much are they going to talk about your team? Maybe nothing at all. But you could find about 1,000 Ravens YouTube channels, Ravens blogs, Twitter accounts, whatever, and have all the news you could possibly want. There's just way more. There's way more for you to get whatever you want, whenever you want it, however you want it. You're not forced to watch programming to hope they talk about something you care about. You care about the Los Angeles Angels and Shohei Ohtani. You don't have to sit through 40 minutes of first take to hope you get 10 minutes of Shohei talk. You can listen to an hour Angels podcast every single day, I'm sure.
If they still want live sports content in the morning that's a little bit more lighthearted and not so combative, they could throw in Pat McAfee. If they want something that's edited or pre-recorded that just kind of lives on YouTube, they can watch Tom Grossi's 30 and 30 series every morning. They can throw on Brandon Perna. They can watch The Pivot. They can watch Flemlow. If they want fantasy content specifically, like on-demand fantasy content because they're getting ready for their drafts, they can watch the Underdog Fantasy channel. They can watch BDGE. If they want Madden content to get ready for the Madden release coming up, they can watch Bengal. There's so many options now. They don't have to watch First Take if they don't want to watch First Take.
Yeah, you can watch. It's crazy to say because it sounds so simple, but you can watch what you want to watch. You can watch what your interests are. And when this is another thing that happens is that your time all of a sudden gets consumed. Let's say you have 4 hours to watch stuff you want to watch. Well, if all of a sudden you're watching some Madden content, let's say you like cooking, you're watching cooking content. Let's say you like fantasy football, you're watching or ingesting fantasy football. Let's say you like wrestling, you're watching some wrestling, and then you're watching your favorite Netflix show. You don't have time to just have First Take on, or you don't have time to watch PTI. Everything is so, you only have so many hours in a day to ingest content, to ingest media. And that's spanning all media. That's not even counting music. That's not even counting other stuff you like to read, books or audiobooks or whatever. So people's time is just way more valuable now because there's so many different outlets vying for it. That's something else that isn't being talked about yet in this video, that ESPN 20 years ago or 10 years ago was only going against other sports networks, of which there were none, basically just Fox Sports. Now ESPN is competing with Netflix, Hulu. They're competing with HBO. They're competing with Twitter. They're competing with YouTube channels of every single broad genre, because the time, like if someone wants to watch something, they can do it on 90 different mediums. So they're not just in this small little bubble of sports media. They're competing with everything. Like this guy said, PTI, 30 minutes of PTI is competing with a 30-minute Madden video. That wasn't the case before.
This is not the 90s anymore. The audience is no longer captive. And I feel like it's taken a lot of legacy media outlets, in particular TV networks, it's taken them way too long to catch on to that fact.
Yeah.
For the first time ever, ESPN has to truly convince sports fans to watch their content over the hundreds of other content creators now that are making stuff for free.
Way more than 100.
They never had to do that before, and they've kind of had to change their entire content strategy as a result. And again, they're doing it a lot later than they should have, but I at least do want to give them credit for finally catching up. And everything that they've done over the last 3 weeks, by the way, in my opinion, is part of that new content strategy. ESPN is now kind of taking a step back, and they're not focusing so much on having the network brand be at the forefront, and instead they're letting individual talent brands take the spotlight.
That's what they have to do, because ESPN isn't enough now because of all the stuff I just laid out. What is going to draw eyeballs is if people care about the person. What people want now, if you're in sports media, this is the question that you should ask yourself. Do people want to watch a game with me? Do people like want to have a beer with me? Do people want my opinion on random thing? If something happens with the Saints, like I cover the Saints a lot, obviously on this channel, live in New Orleans. If something happens with the Saints, I hope that my viewers, one of the first things they think of is, I wonder what James thinks about this. That's the goal. You want to become the friend of the audience. You want to become like how Barstool became like a buddy thing. Big Cat seems like everybody's buddy, right? Big Cat is the most popular Barstool personality because he's their friend. People care about what's Big Cat eating for breakfast. They care what's he wearing, what's he doing at the ballpark. If he goes and watches a game, people want to know what kind of shenanigans is he up to at the Cubs game. How many hot dogs did he eat? How many beers did he have? People care about that stuff. People don't care about that stuff with Jeff Van Gundy. People don't care like, man, I wonder what Jeff Van Gundy, I wonder what his day at the what his day at the NBA game is like. I wonder what kind of shoes Jeff Van Gundy wears. Like, no one cares. You've got to sell the personality, the person across all media. The person is what matters. Less than the network you're on, the radio station you're on, the magazine you're writing for. Like if I keep saying Big Cat. If Big Cat left Barstool and went to Sports Illustrated, people would read, or they would carry over, and they would keep ingesting Big Cat's content, whether it's on Barstool or Sports Illustrated or wherever else. If blank random anchor from ESPN went to blank random news station in Cincinnati and became their sports anchor, the viewers wouldn't carry over because people don't care about the blank random anchors as a person.
And here's what I mean by individual talent brands, by the way. part of my job is trying to understand how people work, how they prioritize their time, how they make buying decisions, really how they make any decision. Because at the end of the day, my job through content creation is to try to convince you to spend as much time out of your day with me as I can, rather than spending it with ESPN. That is literally what my job is. I am competing for your attention. And I can't compete for your attention without having a personal brand. I mean, 4 years ago, why do you think that I started going on camera all of a sudden? Like, I needed a differentiating factor for my brand. At the time, and even more since then, there were a lot of channels popping up on YouTube, and it's just been kind of a growing category over the last several years. But there were a lot of channels that were popping up that were doing similar things to what I was doing, in the sense that we were all, analyzing all 22 and kind of giving our takes based on tape study. And we were all just kind of doing like faceless voiceover, and they're all phenomenal. Like Alex.
So I used to stream on Twitch a lot. It was probably 3-4 years ago now. And it was a successful Twitch stream. It was I think pretty good. It had a good audience base, a lot of engagement, all that stuff. And when people would try and break into streaming, and they would always ask me, questions or whatever about their stream, if they were playing a video game, I would always tell them that there's two avenues of streaming, especially when it comes to like video games. Are people watching you for your skills and watching you for your gameplay because you're really, really, really good? Or are they watching you for you? If they're watching you for you, then you need to highlight the personality. You need to make that the forefront of the stream. You don't have to worry about, like, don't turn your mic off or don't turn your camera off and just have the gameplay if people want to watch it for the person, right? Vice versa, if they're watching it for the gameplay, don't make your camera the biggest part of the screen. It makes sense. And that's what this guy's talking about. Like, if there's a million different all 22s, you got to wonder, are people watching this for the all 22? Or are they watching it because of me as the presenter? If they're watching it as me as the presenter, I need to give more of that. I need to offer more personality, more character, more whatever, than worry about the technicality of what my content is.
Alex Rollins is great. Sam Gold is great. Thinking Football, Billy Stevens. Like, I watch all their stuff every single week. Like, it's a great group of people, but we all make very similar content. And all of our videos were kind of blending together, right? And I just had to differentiate myself somehow so that my brand would stick out amongst a lot of channels that were doing similar things. Hence, me going on camera. And to a degree, I do think that gambit did work. And I'll be honest, early on, I was terrified of being on camera. Like, I did not want to do it. I was extremely nervous. Hence why I oftentimes back then had a drink every single show, because I couldn't do it on camera without that. Like, I needed something to kind of like calm my nerves. And obviously I kind of kept that as part of my brand, right? Kind of having
just hitting the hooch,
the bar and whiskey and cocktails.
Jeez,
and everything.
What's going on here?
Part of my episodes. But
10 a.m. my guy.
Like, literally the reason why that started was because I needed it to get through filming on camera.
My God.
That was how nervous I was. But I had to do it. And you got to do what you got to do to differentiate yourself and build your brand.
Pal. It's not that big of a deal.
And I don't regret it at all. For all of the newer creators that are watching this, so I'm going to give like one piece of advice here. Your brand is not just what you make, it's how you make people feel when they watch what you make. Yeah. So, when I'm spending an entire day putting LEDs inside this cabinet and rigging up all these different lights and trying to get the exact right lens that I need and make this shot as good as I possibly can as like my home shot. I should throw up a picture here of like what this set actually looks like. Like, this is a set. It's my office, but it is a set.
I would say the way content, or especially on YouTube, is now, it's less important, like quality wise, like not quality, but what's on screen. Probably 10-ish years ago, when YouTube was like all the 3, 4, 5 minute, very highly edited. It was a lot of like music, sound effects, graphics, like a lot was happening on the screen. it was super important to edit. It was super important to have sound effects. It was super important to be grabby and clickbaity and all that. Now it's much more like, I know a lot of people who watch, they'll put YouTube on like this video I'm doing right now. This is a longer video, or it's going to be 40 plus minutes. If a lot of people are going to put this on when they're driving and they'll just listen to this content. So 10 years ago, I would have had to do all these sound effects, all these edits, all these graphics, all this stuff. But now it's not really like that. Now it's more of a conversation. Now it's more long form. Now it's different. Obviously, some channels are still the highly edited, highly graphics, but even that's changed, and the whole how people consume stuff has changed, and how what videos do well has changed, and things like that. So that's something else that even within a change or a shift in content creation, there's all these like micro shifts that happen.
Because I'm trying to create a feeling when you watch my content, and that's what really builds a brand. Is it's not just making content, it's making your audience attribute a certain feeling to your content. If we look at the brands of not all, but like most debate show personalities, they're very animated. They can be very combative at times. Like, even though it's all a show, it's performance, right? It can be very combative. It can be contrarian for the sake of being contrarian, and the energy can get real negative sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't feel like it's all a show, and sometimes it does feel personal, sometimes it does get personal. We saw what happened with Skip and Shannon, right?
We covered a situation that got personal last week. I think we covered on the channel,
right? Like that started going from haha, it's just a show, to they're legitimately insulting each other pretty darn quick. And then that's what the brand of the show is, right? It's toxicity, it's anger.
I think what my videos do, so we'll peek behind the curtains a little bit, but I think my style, or what viewers expect on this channel, it kind of simulates the embrace debate thing, where we're reacting to a video. So it's kind of a simulation of me debating or having a conversation with the video, right? And then there's a third component, which is the audience, which is the viewer. So the viewer is the audience, how they would be on a debate show. But whereas a debate show, you may not like either host, and it may feel kind of negative. If you're continually watching this channel, or if you're continually watching any channel like this, more than likely you like the host, right? So you're rooting for the host, or you have a positive take on the whole video. Whereas if you're watching Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp scream at each other, you may have a negative view of both hosts, and then it's a very negative experience. So that's why I think what we do here works so well, is that I offer context that, like, my context. So people come here, one, for my context or my opinion. I'm offering it on a channel or on a video. So we're kind of watching the video together. Simultaneously, there's a bit of a debate or bit of a conversation happening. It's a very unique thing. That's why a lot of people, we're deep into the video now. So, if you're still watching, thank you very much. But a lot of people demonize react content, which is what this is. And I think the react content, when people just play a video and they just let it play out, and they're like, man, what'd you think about that? That is wrong. But what I do, I think, is very different. When we react to a video, we offer a ton of context. Most of the time, I'll talk for 4 minutes before the video even starts. I basically give you my thought, my thesis, my take. Here's someone else's take. Then I either agree with it or disagree with it, give you the reasons why. And we kind of have it becomes a new thing. I look at these videos the same way that I would look at someone reviewing like a book, or reviewing a movie, or reviewing a video game or something like that. It's their take on the entire thing, which makes it a whole new thing. Like, you ever watch somebody break down a movie trailer, and you'll all of a sudden be like, whoa, I didn't think about that, or oh, I missed that, or oh, I didn't think about this, or that's a good point. That's kind of what I see in this channel. It's less react, and it's more, here's the subject, let's have a big group discussion on it. That's why I always encourage y'all to talk in the comments, because I love seeing the comments and seeing different opinions or stuff I didn't think of, or people view things differently or whatever. It's a huge conversation. And that's why I think these kind of videos do well.
Anger, it's personal attacks, and there's very few people that actively feel good while watching that. And again, your brand is how you make the audience feel when they're watching your content. So again, if the majority of the sports fan audience doesn't feel good while they're watching your stuff because it's not a good vibe, they're going to go to social media to find something that does make them feel good. They're going to go to Pat MacAfee Show. They're going to go to That's Good Sports. They're going to go to Flemlow. They're going to go to Foolish Baseball. Let's see, what's another one? They're going to go to Destroying, right? Like the Undercover One-on-Ones was one of the best videos, like most fun I've had watching a sports video in a long time. And that wasn't on a network. That was on YouTube. I mean, hell, for people that want just like pure X's and O's content, like the real nerdy shit, I would hope that they come to me, because I make the type of content that I don't think you're going to see on TV that much, because it's really hard to make. And there's a lot of hours that go into it. And it's just not practical for a TV network to make the type of stuff that I make.
I mean, it's just obvious. Like Food Network. Food Network has what? 15 shows on during the day? If you don't like those hosts, they're giving you like 15 options. You can either have that or 40,000 options on the rest of the internet to get the same thing. So out of 40,000, the chances are you're probably going to find someone you like versus the 15 that Food Network's offering you. And if that's the case, you'll watch them. It's just a numbers game. These networks, what I think the network should do is what I said earlier. They should take people from YouTube or from Twitch or from wherever who are doing it and let them do it on that network. That's what they should do. Someone who has a fan base, someone who is an individual, create like their individual brand, then give them a time slot, let it rip, versus just having some random person on ESPN.
And I use that to my advantage, because if they can't get it there, they're going to come here. And that's what I'm counting on. When you watch one of my videos, you know that probably on average 50 to 80 hours, depending on the subject, went into the creation of that video, at least on the film study ones. This one's obviously going to take a lot less. But generally speaking, as much research as I physically can do has gone into every single video. And it's, me just pouring through playbooks, me pouring through tape, combing through data, sending late night text messages to my coaching buddies and asking very stupid questions and getting remarkably clear answers back that I then have to find a way to translate into English so that I can properly explain how this sport works to people that are just browsing YouTube on a Saturday night, right? And that takes a long time. And that every time you watch one of my videos, I am not just talking out of my ass. Like, that is my brand, is doing
deep
the work,
analytics,
doing the research.
Much respect.
And even if my take is
love
wrong,
analytics.
I have a reason for why I say what I say. And so even though my brand does not lead to a lot of volume in terms of posting, it does mean that every time I post, people come back because they know that I put in the work to say what I am saying, right?
The most important thing is that he knows his brand. The most important thing a content creator can do in any form of content is know your brand. Know what people want. Know what people are buying. Not literally buying, but like what people want out of your content. If you're a musician and people like you as a person, don't make it all about the music. Show the human side of you. And then the music thing will come as well. Well, people get that mixed up a lot. They think their content is something that it's not. They think that that people want whatever. The like sports betting is a good example. Some people think that the audience just wants the picks. But a lot of the times the audience just wants to hear, they just want to hear the person, their trials and tribulations. They just want to like sweat a bet with the person because they think the person's funny or they think the person's a friend. They don't really care about the, you know, the actual bet. They just want to like be a part of something. Golf is another example. A lot of golf content creators may think people want to see my shots. They want to see the technical parts of the game. When in reality, people may just think that they're funny and they want to watch them play golf because they're funny. So if that's the case, don't focus on the angle of the club face. Focus on the funny stuff that happens when you're playing golf. Understanding your brand is the biggest hurdle, I think, when it comes to content creators. When they can't define their brand, or if they're incorrectly defining their brand, it's very hard to find success.
And that's a great spot, I think, for my brand to be. And that's exactly where I want it to be. I make content for nerds because I am a nerd. And my content will never be at the top of the sports media pyramid. And I'm totally okay with that. I don't want to be at the top of the pyramid. It's fucking lonely up there. I'd rather be down here
family channel
on the bottom rung with all the other nerds so that we can just talk about football.
That's another big thing that individual content does. It shrinks what's needed. So like ESPN, if you're getting 50,000 viewers on a show, that is some shit ratings, right? That's some bad ratings. If a show is getting 50,000 viewers, it's not going to be on for very long. If a YouTube channel is getting 50,000 views per video, pretty good. That is a very successful YouTube channel. If you're getting more than that, then you're getting into the 50,000 views a video is already the 0.00001%. So because the investment is small, what's needed is smaller. So that's how you can have all these niche channels. I guarantee you right now, if we YouTube birdhouse building, there's going to be birdhouse channels on YouTube. There's probably YouTube channels dedicated just to Power Rangers or the Game of Thrones or all that stuff. It's you understand that it's going to be small, but that's okay. You don't need that much. You know, if we get, I don't know, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 views a video. That's pretty damn good. Like, I'm okay. 1,000 views a video, couple 50 to 100 comments a video. Let's rock and roll. We're cool. You know, I don't need to hit some rating. I don't need to have the highest rated radio station within a 50-mile radius. You know, so that also helps that like niche specific content.
Like that's where I love to be. And I hope I stay here forever. Because the farther you get up the ladder, boy, the longer you can fall. So I'm good staying down here. Truly, I am. Now transitioning over to the network side of things and how they are prioritizing these individual brands. One of their only shows that year over year is doing better every single season is NFL Live. And they probably make the closest thing, at least on TV, to the content that I try to make, right? Like it's...
Mina Kimes is a great example of what networks should do. NFL Live is like, Mina has a very strong presence on her own individual brand. Her Instagram, her Twitter, her podcast, all that stuff. Her also being on NFL Live is really good for ESPN. She is a brand to herself. Her being a brand to herself is going to boost NFL Live. And if it's her and 3 other people with brands all talking about something, people are going to watch. People care what they're saying. People care a lot more about Mina Kimes talking about Saquon Barkley than like Eric Mangini talking about Saquon Barkley. And Eric Mangini was a head coach in the NFL. But Eric Mangini doesn't have the personal brand that Mina does. I guarantee you ratings would be better for Mina, Big Cat, Pat MacAfee, and I don't even know a fourth, and me. That would be better than John Gruden, Eric Mangini, Doug Peterson, and Mike Tomlin doing a show. People don't care that that's 4 NFL coaches. People want to hear, or people are invested into the personalities, the person, the people.
It's 4 smart football people talking about football. And I love that type of content. I watch NFL Live every single show because it's the only thing I
has a personal brand. Schefter is a individual brand.
Really enjoy watching on ESPN. And I do think that the reason why that show has been successful is because the individual brands of the people on that panel, whether it's RC, Mina, Swagoo, Dan, those individual brands cut through the noise of the ESPN corporate brand as a whole, and they draw people in, right? Like they are an actual draw.
Scott Van Pelt's a good example. Scott Van Pelt, people care about Scott Van Pelt as a person. They care about what he's eating, what he's listening to, what movies he's watching. I'll tell you a good indicator is if you cover NFL and people also tune into other stuff you're doing. Like, people who they cover sports, but they also give their opinion on Italian restaurants, or they also give their opinion on books, or they also give their opinion on movies. People just care about, when they like somebody, they just care about all their opinions. They want to know what's going on in their life.
To get people to watch ESPN content, like me. Like, I don't watch ESPN, but I watch NFL Live. And there's a lot of people like me that don't watch the network, but they watch that show. So when I say that ESPN is now prioritizing, individual, strong, personal brands, they're trying to get more people like the panelists on NFL Live. They're trying to get more Minas and Dans and Marcuses and RCs, right? Because that is how they can try to draw sports fans back under their overall umbrella.
Yeah, I mean, just like I just said, if Pat MacAfee was all of a sudden one of the people on Around the Horn, guess what? Around the Horn's ratings are going to skyrocket.
And they're going to get those individual personal brands from outside of ESPN. The people that have built those brands outside of their influence, they need to bring them back under the tent. That's why they're getting Pat McAfee. That's why I would bet a pretty good amount of money that they're at least exploring bringing in Shannon Sharpe, because he is a huge personal brand in his own right. Like, I'd bet there's some sort of deal on the table for them, getting Club Shay Shay, under ESPN, because that's a huge show in its own right. I would bet that within 5 years on Monday Night Football, in the pregame show, we're going to have Tom Grassi doing skits on the Monday Night pregame show. I'd bet that within 5 years, ESPN's draft coverage is going to have Destroying doing undercover one-on-ones with top receiver prospects. Because why wouldn't you? Like, that would be amazing content, not just on TV, but on social as well.
Agreed.
I don't know why they haven't done it already, actually.
You're all on a Carnival cruise.
I mean, now we're knee-deep in a Carnival cruise. At least they're skippable.
Like, even me, like, my brand is nowhere near the size of Destroying, and it's nowhere near the size of Tom's, but like, I would love if one day one of these networks would let me do my own simulcasts for games, like on this channel, or maybe on the...
That's why the Manning cast is so successful. It's not for Peyton and Eli's genius, analytical brains. It's because people enjoy watching them kind of banter back and forth and have the guest on and the funny moments and the random quirks and the goofs and the gaffes. That's why the Manning cast is so successful. It's not because of... It's sold as like, see the game through Peyton Manning, a genius quarterback, see the game through his eyes, but that's not what the Manning cast is at all. It's him just kind of goofing, and people like Peyton Manning, and they want to see the Manning brothers goof around. So like, that's a great example of what people want. But ESPN, I think, originally thought it'd be something very different, and that's misunderstanding your brand.
Bootleg channel with EJ, like, whatever. Like, I would take anything I could get to be able to show an NFL game on YouTube, which now there's an NFL partnership with YouTube, so maybe it's more possible now than it was in the past. But I would love to be able to have a sanctioned simulcast of me getting to do color commentary while getting to show the game and being able to stream the game with my audience enjoying it with me.
Tim the Tatman, one of the biggest streamers in the world. He's a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. He has had partnerships with the NFL in the past where he's able to live stream a Cowboys game and just kind of sit there and watch it and react with his chat. He doesn't know anything about the analytical side of football. The chat just wants to watch the game with him. The chat just wants to watch a Cowboys game with Tim and kind of LOL and yuck it up while he's watching the team. That's why watch-alongs are so big. Like Dave Portnoy, he's a huge Boston sports fan. They do watch-alongs all the time for Boston playoff games because they just want to see Prez throughout the game. They don't care about his takes and his whatever. They just want to be in the room. They want to be there enjoying the experience. It's all one big experience now.
I have no idea what type of legal mechanisms would have to be tripped for that to even be possible, but maybe one day it will be possible, and I can't wait for that day. So, you know, if you're with ESPN or Amazon or NBC and you're watching this, what's up? Shoot me an email. Love to hear from you. Look, sports media over the last 15, 16 years that I've been a part of it, in every role you can think of on both sides of the fence between old media and new media, it's changed a lot. You know, the networks have changed, the content has changed, the people making the content
it'll continue to change.
Anything. Everything's different now, and I mean different in a good way. The democratization of sports media is the best thing to happen to sports media ever.
Yeah,
and it's
options
certainly the
are
best
always
thing for the
better.
consumer.
For the
Bottom
consumer.
line,
I was just about to say
what
that.
all of those changes have led to are both the McAfee acquisition as well as the layoffs that ESPN went through. And it's not that it's two sides of the same coin, but they are two separate paths that ESPN is taking simultaneously to get to the same destination, which is ultimately profitability. Now, if you're a member of the sports media landscape at large, and I mean that in any context, doesn't matter how big your footprint is, whether you're working for yourself or working for somebody else, new media, old media, it doesn't matter. I would love to get your perspective on this down in the comments.
Yeah, good video, great video. Again, this was Brett Kollmann. We'll put his link in the description. But yeah, it's a good conversation. And I love these long form videos. We've been kind of doing them like once a week, where we'll do this huge discussion over a really broad topic, in this case, sports media, something that I enjoy talking about because I've been doing content one way or another since 2010. You know, I mean, it when I think about it, it is kind of crazy that in some form, it's been 13 years, whether it's YouTube, podcast, newspaper, radio, you know, live stream, whatever. You know, I've been kind of monitoring or ingesting or doing, even on a much smaller scale, but still. So it's definitely something that I am passionate about, and the topic I think is very interesting. But let me know in the comments below what you think about any of that long hour video. If you've made it this far, put in the comments below, I made it to the end of the video, and you will get a comment of the week for sure. But thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video that I guarantee you won't be an hour long. Thank you for watching. See you next time.